fifth letter. This letter, like some of the previous letters, is about tzedakah, about charity. But we're going to go through a very intriguing explanation till we get there. We begin with a verse in the prophets, the book of Shmuel, Samuel. It says, V'yas David Shem. And David, referring to King David, made a name for himself. Simple meaning, as Rashi explains, he buried the dead of the enemies, or through his heroism, as he made a name for himself. The Zohar expounds upon this idea. What does it mean that in a related verse, a couple verses later, it says that King David, he executed justice and tzedakah for all of his people, and thus he connects, the Zohar connects, and therefore made a name. Well, continues the Zohar and says, Rabbi Shimon wept and said, who makes the holy name every day? He asks the question. In other words, King David made a name, so he's asking, how do you make a name? Meaning, God's name. Right? And he responds, the person that gives charity unto the poor. That's a Zohar. Zohar is a mystical understanding of the verse, obviously not a simple understanding, but as the Alter Rebbe then wants to answer a couple of questions over here. First of all, how's it possible to make God's name? Oh, God's holy name. What does it mean to make his name? Like, I was given a name. By the way, my name in English and Hebrew is the same. Ronnie. Hebrew it's Ronnie. Ronnie. Reish Vav Nun Yud. Mother's Israeli. Me too, but that's... and therefore, and my father's Canadian. So how do you make such a shidduch? So you give a name, all three kids, that it was used in Hebrew and in English. So I have a sister Karen, lives here with me, and in Israel, a sister Leora. And that became both Hebrew and English name. In any case, that name that I don't make my name, I was given a name. And we were given a name, right? But God, so if the Torah gives a name, so what does it mean to make his name? How do you do that exactly? Right? And if that's the case, why is it through charity, through tzedakah, that we're actually making his name? How do we understand that? All right, we're going to go on a journey now, and we're not going to answer these questions today, but we're going to on a journey. First of all, name, God's name. So we are very familiar with the Tetragrammaton, or the Shem Havaya, right? The essential name of God, the Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey, is the source of all of creation, as we've explained at great length in many occasions. But here, quoting a verse from Isaiah that says that B'Yudkei Hashem Tzur Eilamim, with the letters Yud and a Hey from God's name, God is the strength of the worlds. Strength. Tzur means a rock, but also a rock is strong, so it means strength, right? What does it mean, strength? Means through the Yud and a Hey, God actually creates the world. So, yes, God's name is made up of 4 letters, but the truth is, the first 2 letters is also a name of God. We don't pronounce it. I guess we don't pronounce the full 4 letters. We don't pronounce this either. So we're going to call it Yud and a Hey. Yud and a Hey. So with these 2 letters, God creates all of the worlds, spiritual worlds and the physical world. Actually, specifically, God creates the spiritual worlds with the letter Yud. And he creates this world, the physical world that we all know and love. Well, hopefully, with the letter Hey. Okay? Now, what does this mean exactly? What's the connection between the spiritual worlds and specifically the world to come, meaning, in the spiritual world, meaning Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, right? Where souls are there after their time in this world, that God creates through the letter Yud specifically, and this world through the Hey. So today we're going to deal primarily with this spiritual realm that God creates with the letter Yud and not the letter Hey. We're not going to deal with that today. That will be next classes. So, what is Gan Eden? The Garden of Eden, where the souls repose. Well, what do they do there? The souls are delighting and having a righteous experience, enjoying the splendor of the divine presence, the Shekhinah. And there's two Garden of Edens. There's an upper one, a lower one. Upper one in the world of Bria, lower one in the world of Yetzirah. And what's the pleasure that they're having there? They're comprehending godliness. So in that comprehension, really, it's the light and vitality of divine wisdom, which is the letter Yud. Yud refers to Chachma. And the point is that it is just that, a point. It's a point beyond comprehension. Right? Did you get the point? Right? It's hard to get the point. Sometimes the point is beyond comprehension. Actually, the point of Chachma is the source of comprehension, of intelligence, but it itself is beyond comprehension. So that's why the Zohar explains that in Gan Eden, Bina, the understanding that's going to be permeated in the souls there, in order that they can understand, actually it flows from the Yud of Chachma, of supernal wisdom. It's the source of the apprehension. So we've learned Chachma in the human experience is that flash of intuitive understanding. It's a flash. It's that seed. It's the dot that has in it everything. Just like the seed has the whole tree in it, so likewise it has the entire understanding. But at that point, it's beyond comprehension, as it is in Chachma. It needs to then go and be developed, right, in the mental gestation of Bina, of understanding. That's where it gets fully developed, and that way we have a comprehensive understanding, right? So Chachma is the primordial stage of intellect before you apprehend and understand something, right? It is actually in a state of obscurity, just like a dot, right? That's why often we just don't get the point. We miss the point because the point can be obscure. Because actually in Chokhmah, the understanding of something is obscure and concealed. So what happens from that point of Chokhmah, a minuscule measure of divine light flows from there into the faculty of Bina, making that some of that flash of intuitive idea that it could be understood and comprehended. But intrinsically, it's concealed. The point of Chokhmah, right? With this, the Zohar says, Chokhmah is referred to as Nekuda Behechala, the point in the palace. So what's the palace? The hay. Hay. It looks somewhat, an an insight here. You put the letter Yud can be represented by a dot. It's the smallest letter, and many people when they write the Yud, they just make a dot. So you put a dot into the Hey, it makes the point in the palace, the point of Chachma in the understanding of the palace, meaning of Bina. Bina's understanding. So, meaning that the souls that are housed, where are they housed? In the understanding that they perceive of, and they therefore have a splendor, pleasure in the divine presence of God. That's where they're housed in Gan Eden. Where's that housing of their soul? Is in the Bina. But what are they getting? It's a minuscule flow from that flash of Chokhmah that's in the palace of Bina. And the soul is comprehending, apprehending a little bit. And it creates, of course, a great pleasure and desire for more of that apprehension. Because they understand and recognize there is more. Because the point of Chachma is housed within them. So there's this pleasure of a minuscule amount. Because they apprehend, understand the soul of the godliness, the Shekhinah that's there. Right, where is it all stemming from? The Yud of Chachma. The Yud of God's name. Which Yud is what's creating, or is the source of the apprehension that's housed in the palace or in the Bina of understanding that the soul apprehends. So the source, again, for the spiritual world, as we're explaining the spiritual world now being Gan Eden, it's the letter Yud. Because remember, we began saying that the source of creation is two letters. The spiritual world, the letter Yud of God's name, and this physical world, the letter Hey. Tomorrow we'll get into the letter Hey. We're going to still continue with the letter Yud to understand the letter Yud further. But remember that the context of understanding is here. We understand that the Yud is the source of giving the apprehension, the comprehension that the soul can have pleasure in the spiritual realm, that there's a flow of divinity that comes from divine supernal wisdom into the apprehension that the soul gets, Bina, and that is what animates the soul in Gan Eden. Now there's another aspect to the letter Yud. Follow carefully. It says that Abba Yesod Barata. Chachma is referred to as father. Bina is mother, by the way. Right? The father, he founded the daughter. And another place, and we're not going to get into that today, mother founds son. Mother, Bina, right, gives birth to the son. Meaning, understanding gives birth to son, which is emotions. Okay? But we're not going there. But Chachma gives birth to daughter. What's daughter? If son is emotions, daughter is emotions, meaning the six emotions. And here we don't mean being emotional, right? Like, because he would think, well, aren't women more emotional? Maybe that's not PC, but it's okay. It's fine. Nothing wrong with that. It's actually true. But no, that's not what we're talking about over here. But I don't want to digress on that. So what is daughter? Daughter is malchus, royalty, right? Of course. Royalty. So Chachma gives rise to royalty. Now, what is royalty in other terms that we know about, folks? Well, how does the king rule? With his word. So Malchus is the divine level, and even in us too, is speech. So the metaphor over here, the father gives founded the daughter, right? So the metaphor over here is that Chachma is the source and founds speech, right? Which is interesting. In other words, speech, we would think intuitively, is probably sourced in our understanding, which is Bina. But no, it's not. As we know, today we know, but we probably didn't know this back in the day, except for Torah teaching us this idea, that speech is not an intellectual accomplishment. It's a developmental accomplishment. When there's a greater development of the child, then they can speak. I had a son who was very smart, very intelligent, but at 3 years old, spoke very little, had various, simple vocabulary that, the other 3-year-olds had much more. His development was delayed. Right? It wasn't, delayed by maybe a year, shall we say. I don't even remember that exactly. But the point that I'm making is that it is not an intellectual exercise, the power to speak. It is a developmental, not based on intelligence. So the Alter Rebbe points this out. So what does this mean? So the formation of letters of speech, which letters of speech come from the 5 organs of articulation, that's not an intellectual process, right? The 5 organs of articulation: mouth, tongue, teeth, palate, and larynx, right? So it's not an intellectual process in order to use your 5 organs to speak. And it's not inherent in the nature of these organs that they should pronounce letters in the way they do, right? By means of the breath and the sound that strikes them. So it's not a natural faculty of the organs the 5 organs to be able to do that. And it's not an intellectual faculty that does it. So, for example, by lips, right? So the letters pay, mem, we use primarily our lips to say those, right? So it's not the nature of lips to, when you want to say the letter mem, that the lips know by nature that they should make a mem, use their lips in such a way to make the letter mem. Or it's not an intellectual, our intellect that compels me that when I want to say the letter mem, that, okay, not at all, right? Not at all. On the contrary. So, and this is empirically evident. I mean, he's saying something that I'm sure is all pretty clear to us. Right? Even when it comes to the vowels, for example, it's interesting. Kometz, aleph, all. Kometz means the vowel that you have on below the letters, it's like a small T, like a shortened T. And you pronounce it oh. Komet means to squeeze. So you squeeze your mouth when you say oh. Komet, when you sing a letter aleph with that vowel, oh, right? So is it my lips that know how to do that? Like they were, it was naturally instinctual, or it's something intellectual? Not at all. Right? Did I compress my mouth to make? Or patach is a straight line underneath, and patach aleph patach means to open. Right? Where before it was compress and squeeze. Now when I say so it would be the vowel and the sound under the letter. Again, this is not a intellectual endeavor to do this. It's not natural for the mouth to be able to do that, right? And as the Alter Rebbe says, there's no need to go further in this matter. It's simple and clear to any intelligent person that it's not based on that, right? So then what is it? Says the Alter Rebbe, it's based on hidden intellect, the primordial stage of intellect that gives us the capacity of the soul to articulate letters. Meaning, hidden intellect, meaning it's from Chochmah. Chochmah founded the daughter. Father founded the daughter. Chochmah is the source of speech. It's the source of speech. Not Bina, right? Chochmah, as we said, is the source of intelligence, but it's not intelligence itself, right? It is beyond intelligence. And therefore, concludes the Alter Rebbe in today's class, that's why an infant cannot speak, even though an infant can understand everything. What does that mean? If you understand everything, it means their intelligence has developed. They get it, but they can't speak it. Why? Because it didn't develop yet, that power within them. Because it's based on hidden intellect. And being that it was not developed, they're not able to speak, even though they understand. They have the intellectual capacity of understanding what's going on. That's why you see how children can be very frustrated. And I saw that in the son that I'm talking about, the great frustration he had. He understood. He was 3 years old. But he had trouble to express himself. Today there's no trouble at all, as a matter of fact. Thinking of it, probably of all the children, he might definitely have one of the more articulate. Interesting. Now, okay, so we just got a free sidebar of understanding the concept of speech, where it comes from, right? Understanding, and today we know that. We know it's developmental. We know that it's not based on intelligence, and therefore an OT can help develop, through speech therapy, to develop that power that the child can speak, right? So, and that's what's done. It's not giving them, an intellectual process, or let's develop their intellectual capability. No, it's giving them the training that will develop more quickly that power within them. Now, what was the point over here? Father is Yud, Chachma. It's the source of divine speech. That is the source of creating spiritual worlds. That's the point of the learning today was that the letter Yud of God's name, which is supernal divine wisdom, is the source of both the comprehension, the apprehension of the souls in Gan Eden, in the spiritual realm, and is the source of the creation of the spiritual realm, because it's the Word of God that creates. And therefore it's the source of creating what? The spiritual worlds. Now the letter Hey, tomorrow's class. Stay tuned for more to come. Yes, powerful stuff indeed. Joseph says it's hard to grasp. And were others having a difficulty with what I just explained? Please let me know if you do. I'm trying to make it easier. Who has a question? Have to bring the question again because I got it lost. It's lost on the feed. I don't see it. Davida, you could bring it with. When you put 2 question marks, that helps. And if you put them in red, like Davida does, that makes it much easier. Does using each of our senses correspond to mitzvahs such as the limbs do? Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay. Ruby, or better known as Rebecca, how is speech related to the spiritual realm? Because God created everything through His Word, through speech. Right? He created everything through speech. So the source of speech is Chachma, divine wisdom. It's the source, as we said, the Father is found in the daughter. Father being Chachma, right? The source of intelligence, or hidden intellect, if you will, just like the dot, in the flash that comes to you. Oh, Eureka, I got it. Do you really got it? You got the flash. It's all there. But you don't fully grasp, you don't grasp it. You just see the light. But in that dot, in that flash, you have it all. But you can quickly lose it. How often you say, oh, I just lost it. And you lost the point. Because it's just that flash. So it's the source of intelligence. It's a hidden intellect. It's the source of speech. With God. With God's speech, He creates the world. Ruby or Rebecca, put 2 question marks before, so I could see that's question. Is the connection between physical and, is that the connection between physical and spiritual? Well, no, we're going to see that the spiritual, that's the creative force of the spiritual realm, and the creative force of the physical realm is the letter Hey of God's name. But more on that to come. We'll have to wait for that. That'll be next class. Okay, Chachma is spelled Ches Chaf Mem Hey. Actually, it's made up of 2 words. Koyachma, the power of what? It's like, oh, what was that? When you say what, it means you didn't get it. You didn't get the point. Because it's a point, it's a flash, it's beyond. You don't comprehend Chachma. From Chachma, you have to bring it into Bina to comprehend. So the comprehension of the souls in Gan Eden is from the Chachma, that flash, and a glimmer of that flash is comprehended by the souls in the Garden of Eden. So it's the power of what? In other words, when you say what, meaning it's beyond you. So this is the source of intelligence, but it's beyond comprehension, apprehension of something, but it's the seed that has it all. Bo or Boo. That must be a nickname. Okay, Rebecca, I hope that helped you. Great. All right, folks. Guess what's happening? Shabbos is happening. Lots of good stuff is happening. Learning Tanya is amazing. And you know what's next happening? Rambam. That we're going to continue. We're going to go to right now. I'm wishing everybody a wonderful Shabbos and Sunday reminder. We'll have 10:30 class. Actually, by the way, folks, I want to let you know, and Davida, if you can put it up on Instagram too, that we have a daily class that starts 7:05 every morning. That's on Zoom and on Chabad Zichron's Facebook, Chabad ZK. 7 o'clock to 7:30, or 7:05 actually, we start to 7:30. We learn Hasidic discourse, and then at 8:30 or between 8:30 and 8:40, we study Chumash and Rashi. Today we did the Shema from this week's Torah portion. So that's again from 8:30 or between 8:30 and 8:40, depending when our services finish. We learn Chumash, the Torah portion of the week, with Rashi, and then we have, and that goes till 9:15 or so, and then of course we have the Tanya. After that we have Rambam, Maimonides. So there's a lot that you can join us beyond the Tanya class. I invite you all. And of course, all of this needs to be brought home, that the learning should be learning to live. And that's the TRC, the Tanya Rabbi community. I invite you all to be a part of. It's something else. As people share, even become vulnerable at times. And growth is immense. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kedushin, Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you. Tanya, have a wonderful day and a good Shabbos.